In the last stream, we began working our way through the alloying questline here, beginning with the blast furnace and the alloy kiln multi-block, which we have since upgraded to the improved blast furnace and the new and improved alloy kiln here, this big old multi-block that we set up right at the end of the last episode, and we actually do have a little bit of automation going on here. We automated the production of charcoal using our upgraded garden cloche to keep this filled with fuel, and eventually also to keep this filled with fuel as well. Right now, we are not automatically sending our iron round into this blast furnace. I think what we'll probably end up doing is setting up another iron production line to automate the production of steel, because we don't really want to send our only iron production and turn it all into steel automatically, because I think then we would just run out of iron, which would not be ideal. Instead, though, what we're going to work on at the start of today's stream is completing this quest line, and by the looks of it, the main goal of this quest line, at least initially, is to get us some form of power generation using either the water wheel or the windmill from immersive engineering. To do that, we have to take these wire cutters that we made at the very end of the last episode and use those to craft some copper wire using some copper plates. Now, we do have a fair bit of copper. I think we're actually still backing up on copper ingots over here. We are indeed. I'm going to take 64 out so that our system starts making even more. And over in our temporary general use controller over here, we should be able to melt down quite a bit of this copper, and then using this plate mold here, we should be able to hopefully very quickly smelt all of that copper into some copper plates, which we can then craft into copper wire. And I do think we're going to need quite a bit of this copper wire, because looking at the subsequent quests, we need to make some LV wire coil, which is made with almost exclusively copper wire, and then from there we need a copper coil block, which is even more of the aforementioned LV wire coil. So we're going to need quite a bit of that to make the kinetic dynamo. This is what we're going to connect either our water wheel or our windmill to allow us to actually start generating power. So let's throw even more copper in there, and then back over here, let's see if we can't get really a decent amount of copper wire. I'm just going to craft all of it into copper wire right away, and then we can do something like this with sticks to get some LV wire, and then from there we can craft that LV wire into the copper coil block. And then as for the kinetic dynamo, we would need 2 redstone, which we don't yet have, and 1 improved mechanical component. This is made with 5 iron plates and 1 copper ingot. If you make it in an engineer's workbench, it actually becomes a little bit cheaper. It just requires the 1 copper ingot and the 2 iron plates. And that's true for a lot of recipes going forward. There are quite a few mechanical components that I think we're going to have to make today. Again, if we look further forward here at this recipe for the heavy engineering block, this requires some steel mechanical components, which are also cheaper to make in the engineer's workbench. And the engineer's workbench itself really isn't too difficult. It requires some treated wooden slabs, the same engineer's crafting table that we made earlier. I believe that's the one that's currently set in the middle of our basic Technium machine. To make this happen, it looks like we are going to need just a little bit more treated wood, which thankfully we do have over here, and stealing that is going to allow us to kind of empty out that coke oven a little bit, because we are still running into the same problem that we had in the last episode, and that's that the creosote here is backing up, which is preventing charcoal from being sent around to here, at least as fast as it normally would be. Thankfully, looking further forward again, both the water wheel and the windmill require a good amount of treated wood, and so we are probably going to start burning through this backlog of creosote oil fairly quickly in today's stream. Before we get too ahead of ourselves though, let's see if we can't make another one of these engineer's crafting tables, and then from there we also need a treated wooden fence to make the engineer's workbench. Now, on top of requiring the workbench, we do also require a specific blueprint if we want to be able to make these components cheaper. For this specific set of recipes, we need the crafting components blueprint. This is a fairly easy recipe. However, at the moment, we don't have paper or blue dye. The blue dye should be fairly straightforward. For us, it should be a case of getting some dirt, throwing that into the stone cutter, acquiring blue grass blocks, throwing those down, and then of course using our bone meal to try and get some of those blue poppies. Fantastic, we can then craft those directly into blue dye. Very easy. And then from there, if we want to get paper, that is a different question. I assume we usually get paper from sugarcane. However, in this pack, it might be the case that we need to use the drying table here. This is thankfully not too difficult to make. And the idea here is that if we can get just a little bit of string, which of course we could do with our hemp fiber, but as we saw previously, we can also do with leaves, which we have much more of, this guy here is then able to soak log sheets, which are just made from logs, into soaked paper. Now, the item we just made is the drying table, and you'll see this recipe here is done in the soaking table. The soaking table, if I'm not mistaken, is the drying table, but just waterlogged. And so if I were to, for example, throw down like a block of cobblestone right about here, we could put down a water bucket, place in our drying table, and now this should be a soaking table. It is indeed, you can see in the top left there, it says soaking table, and then that is going to begin to soak our log sheets into soaked paper, and then from there, we need to then run the soaked paper through a non-waterlogged drying table to dry the soaked paper into regular paper. We could use the same one, we could pick it up and unwaterlog it, but I do think it's going to be just that little bit faster if we just take the soaked paper and throw it in here. That way we can do both the soaking and the drying simultaneously, and that really shouldn't take us too long to get the engineer's blueprint, saving us a little bit of iron on all of our future mechanical components. Speaking of which, we of course currently do not have any iron plates, and so I will go ahead and throw 15 iron into there to begin that smelting process, and I do think it's going to be worth spending like the 10 seconds it's going to take here to make another one of these ambient water collectors and have it pump automatically into this fuel tank, just so that I don't have to continually take my bucket and manually move the water every single time that I want to make something faster in the solidifier. Once we have that down, we can take our iron plates out. Back over here, we have almost all 6 of our paper, and we should now have everything we need to craft the crafting components blueprint. And now if we throw this in here with some iron plates and some copper ingots, like so, we can craft our iron mechanical components very easily. And so now, if we want to finish this, we do of course need to get some redstone. The redstone here, as we saw a little bit in the last episode, requires that we take salt that we make in the blast furnace from sand, and then we need to go ahead and run that through a second blast furnace here. So salt we should have, because I believe we made some last time. We did. Not a whole lot, but we only need 2 for the time being. If we run that again through our blast furnace, that should get us some burnt redstone, and then from there, we just need to wash that in the rock washer to make redstone pieces, and thankfully 1 piece of redstone ore is enough to get 1 redstone. So this should be 3 redstone worth of burnt redstone. One thing I did notice while looking at all of these recipes between streams is that we are going to need a lot of blast furnaces going forward, because if we want to automate all of these components for the production of advanced technium, we need at least 1 for steel, we need 2 for redstone, 1 for the salt and 1 for the burnt redstone, and then I believe there's actually another recipe as well that also requires the blast furnace? Yeah, it's the recipe right here for deep slate. If we look at the next questline here, very similar to this More Stones questline, is going to be used to get us the lead, silver, and nickel ingots, and all of these are made from deep slate, and that deep slate, I believe, for now at least, is going to be made exclusively from the blast furnace and stone. So we're going to want a lot of blast furnaces, which means we need a lot of blast brick, which means we could do with taking a lot of our black bricks, which we are now backing up on nicely. I'm assuming we've got another 64 in here that are being extracted. And if we just go ahead and whack those into our research crafter here with the alloys blueprint, that's going to start to kind of passively generate more blast bricks, which we can then of course upgrade to more improved blast bricks to allow us to make more of these blast furnaces to automate everything that we're going to need to automate. For now though, let me go ahead and grab all 3 of these. I'll put some more iron back in because we are going to need more steel very soon. And then let's see if we can't get another rock washer down to wash this redstone. For now, we'll put this down kind of temporarily right about here. We are going to move all of this stuff once we know kind of everything that we need, and we'll get automation set up for everything here. For now, though, if we put this in like so, that should start using the excess water from this ambient water collector to produce our first few pieces of redstone, which we can, of course, then just go ahead and smelt in any one of our furnaces. I think we should have space over in here. We totally do, and that's going to smelt that as fast as we can currently because it is our fastest furnace, and we can then just grab that redstone, boom and boom, and those 2 redstone pieces should be everything that we're going to need to make this kinetic dynamo. Nice. So now that we have this, we can use this to allow us to generate power using either the water wheel or the windmill. I do think that we're going to have to make both of these because they're both quests here. The windmill is the easier recipe because it doesn't require steel, unlike the water wheel. To make this, we just need 8 of these windmill blades, which are made with treated planks and treated sticks. So let me steal even more treated planks out of here. Let's make a bunch of treated sticks, like so. And then let's see if we can't make 8 of these windmill blades, and then craft those windmill blades around an iron ingot to make a windmill. This is a super simple and fairly straightforward way to generate power. You simply place down the kinetic dynamo, like so, and then you place the windmill on the front onto this side that has like the black circle on it, like that, and it will start to spin. You don't get any benefit for placing this higher in the world. It does generate the same amount of power no matter where you place it, and I believe by default, this produces 10 redstone flux per tick. You can increase the amount of redstone flux per tick generated by putting windmill sails onto the windmill. You can put a maximum of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, one for each of the windmill stalks. If you put 8 on, that takes the production all the way up to 34 redstone flux per tick, but it does require a lot of tough fabric, which is a lot of industrial hemp. Not that that should be particularly difficult. If we wanted to, we could temporarily prevent the system from making leather and kind of back up on that to make this faster. On the other hand, there is the water wheel. This is a little bit more expensive. As I mentioned a second ago, it does require steel, but still not too expensive, to be fair. This also goes down on the dynamo. So if I go ahead and break this, ideally with my axe. Also, real quick, someone in the Twitch chat did mention earlier that we can make an iron paxel. The durability on the iron paxel isn't great, like it's less than the other 3 items, but it does give us more inventory space because it basically allows us to have a pickaxe, axe, and shovel all in one. And so if we do something like this, we can now use it as an axe, a pickaxe, and a shovel without having to switch between all 3 tools, and it clears up our inventory just a little bit. So the water wheel goes down in a very similar fashion, but it's a little bit more finicky to generate power with. Now, the most optimal way to generate power with the water wheel is actually to make 3 water wheels. You can put these down in sets of up to 3. And so if we quickly get a few more treated sticks, we should be able to make 2 more of these water wheel segments. And then from there, we should be able to make 2 more water wheels. And the idea here is that you place these down onto the kinetic dynamo, kind of like this. If we go 1, 2, oh, I'm too far out. Also, real quick, another small quality of life improvement that I'm going to make. We did make a second flight block last episode. I'm going to move this flight block over to, say, here. I'm going to grab that second flight block that is currently doing nothing in the system, and I'm going to put it down somewhere over here just so that we do have full base coverage when it comes to flight. If we were to go ahead and place down the dynamo right about here, we can then place the water wheel on it, like so. You don't have to have 3 water wheels. You can just put water down and use it as 1. But if you put 3 water wheels like this, you can then place down water around those water wheels, which will then begin spinning and will begin producing power. So real quick, what I'm going to do, I'm going to steal 2 buckets of water here. That should allow us to create an unlimited water source over near the water wheel, just so we're not coming back and forth to get more water every time. If we just do something kind of temporarily like this, boom, and boom, we can then take water from the middle. And I believe that the idea initially is that you want to put down some blocks to stop the water from flowing backwards like this. And then if you put water down here, here, and here, that's going to begin spinning that water wheel, and it should... Oh, we're in the wrong biome as well. Jeez, I completely forgot about the fact that we are in, if I press F3 here, a snowy plains biome, so the water wheels just might not work for us because the ice is going to continually freeze, much like it did in one of our earlier episodes, which is not at all ideal. Also, in an ideal world, you would also kind of block this in so that the water doesn't flow out, something like this, because you do get extra power if the water flows down under the water wheel, so we could kind of block it in like so. And then, of course, use our paxel here to quickly break the dirt, because it is a nice all-in-one tool. Let me get rid of that, and let me get rid of this. I think I put that 1 too far forward. I think I actually want it here, like that. And then I break this and break this. You'll know it's too far forward if the water wheel doesn't spin. If the water wheel doesn't spin, it means the blocks are in the way. We want to put it here, here, and we've lost our unlimited water source, and here. And if I'm not mistaken, I also want to put dirt here, like that. I did some testing between episodes, and from my testing, this produces about 74 redstone flux per tick. I wasn't able to get it to produce any more. I know older designs did allow the production of about 88 redstone flux per tick, but any of those that I tried just didn't work. The water wheel just didn't spin or actively produce less power. Again, for us, this doesn't seem like it's going to work unless we actively move our water wheels out to a different biome, because it's just going to freeze over and over again. I guess we could put some torches down to prevent that ice from forming. Something like this should allow that to continue to produce power consistently. And so the water wheels are definitely more of a pain to set up because it requires quite a bit of a structure to get going, but you do get more power per kinetic dynamo, because here we're going to get 74 redstone flux per tick. To get anything similar to that or above that, we would have to get 3 fully upgraded windmills, which of course requires a lot of that industrial hemp. So for now, we do have power, which is good. We now need a way to extract the power from this kinetic dynamo. To do that, we have a choice over here. We can either use the basic universal cable from Mechanism. This is fairly cheap. It's 1 LV wire coil with 2 steel, or we can use the LV wire connectors and the LV wire coils from Immersive Engineering. There are pros and cons to both of these. The pro to the LV wire connector is that it's much easier to transfer power over longer distances, because we'd need a lot of the universal cable from Mechanism to do that same kind of distance. Now, what I'm kind of tempted to do real quick here actually is maybe make another one of these double compressed furnaces to have back over for general use, because I do like being able to smelt 4 items at once. It's much nicer than having to smelt things individually in our current furnace, but it is a bit of a pain coming over here every time that we want to use that machine. Either way, once we have 4 terracotta, we can make some LV wire connectors, and these are pretty straightforward. You can put down 1 LV wire connector onto the dynamo, like this, and then if you want to power something, let's say we wanted to power this kiln brick, we could then place the LV connector on here. You then take your coil, right-click here on both the connectors, and it makes a connection. Nice. And you can go quite a ways with this, with the 1 wire. If I put this further down, it should tell me, if I right-click here and then start running, eventually it'll say that we're too far away. So you can see the distance is about this far before you can't go any further. If you do want to go further, that's where you would need these LV wire relays that allow you to kind of transfer even further. For that, actually, we just need 2 more terracotta. And so if I grab some more clay real quick out of here, we should be able to make a set of those. Boom, there we go. So now back over here, if you want to run either power over a longer distance or you want to run power to multiple machines, you can first connect from here to the LV wire relay, and then from there you can then right-click on this guy and then run it really as far as you like again until you run into that kind of red text at the bottom. So we could put one of these here, right-click like that, and we've extended that even further. And so it is easier to run power over a long distance with these cables, whereas the Mechanism pipes do require an individual pipe for every block of distance, much like the fluid and item pipes that we've been using up until now. One slight problem with these is that if you don't insulate the wires, which requires a bunch of tough fabric, you do take damage if you walk into them and if they are actively carrying energy. But if you just don't walk into the wires, everything should be fine. So let's now take a look at what we actually need that power for. So down here, there are a couple of things we could use the power for. One thing that we did mention last episode was these blast furnace preheaters. These can be used to increase the speed of the blast furnace. To make them, we just need some iron plates to make sheet metal. We then need an external heater and a fluid pipe. The fluid pipe is even more iron plates, and the external heater is just missing 1 redstone, actually. And so, real quick, let me grab some sand. And I do think it's worth investing in these preheaters, just because, as we saw earlier, there's so many items that are made inside the blast furnace, so being able to make this faster is going to make our lives a whole heck of a lot easier. And 1 more piece of redstone later, we get the external heater, which is enough to make 1 of these preheaters. I say that, we actually now need more sheet metal, because we did use 1 piece of sheet metal in the making of the external heater. Again, thankfully, that's not too difficult, and to be fair, we could really do with getting multiple preheaters, because you can put down up to 2, 1 on each side of the blast furnace. And a bit more crafting later, we now have enough to make 2 blast furnace preheaters, so these can go down right about here and here, like that. You want to point them down facing to the blast furnace. These do require power, and so for now, let's do something like this and like this. And again, somewhat temporarily. One thing we can make, if we want it to look a little bit nicer, is I believe we can make power poles. They might be called pylons. They are not. They're called posts, these guys right here. These are not necessary by any stretch of the imagination, but they do allow us to place down our LV wire connector relay a little bit higher up. So if we do something like this, we can place down our LV wire relay up here. I believe you can also, if you want to make this look nicer, use the hammer at the top to do something like this and kind of make it look more like a little power pylon. You can then place this down on the top, and then using the LV wire that we don't have, we can connect that up to our power system. To do that, I would actually like to get one more of these. They're just treated wooden fences with some stone bricks, easy enough. Do we have any LV wire left? We do. 2, though, is not going to be enough. I am going to require 1 more set of that. Thankfully, that should be very doable. Boom and boom. And now over here, what we should be able to do is connect this to here, connect this to here, and then we're going to go from here to another post that I'm going to put down right about here, like this, with another one of these LV wire relays. These always have to be in the middle, by the way. You can't use the LV wire connectors in the middle. Those can only be used at either the place that's receiving the power or the place that's generating the power. But if we connect this up, that power should now be making its way round and over into the blast furnace preheaters. And if we look inside of here, this should now be a fair bit faster than it was previously. And it totally is. You can see both of these are online. They are gaining power as well, which I'm surprised that we're actually making more power than the preheaters use, and so they are going to back up on power, which is good. So we can now use this blast furnace just a little bit faster than we did a moment ago. And that is probably not going to last too long, because now the quest book wants us to make 2 more machines that are going to require power, those being the metal press and the crusher. To do that, there are first a few blocks it wants us to craft. It wants us to make a set of redstone engineering blocks and our first piston. The piston should be easy enough. It is standard Minecraft recipes, and we do have some more redstone ready to go. Let me do something like this, and let's also take more of our burnt redstone and place that in the rock washer. We almost certainly should look at getting the redstone automated sooner rather than later, much like we've done with the iron, just so that we have it ready to go. For now, though, that should be enough to make us a piston, and the redstone engineering block is also just more redstone. From there, it also wants us to make a conveyor belt, which is redstone, leather, and iron, easy enough, and then some steel scaffolding, and a heavy engineering block, which is going to require some steel in plate form, and is going to give us another reason to use our engineer's workbench to save on steel plates. Speaking of which, let me throw some steel into here to start getting those steel plates. Over here, let's get some more redstone processing, and let's get some more iron in here to continue making steel for some future crafts as well. Once we have all of the extra resources, let's see if we can't make this happen. We should have what it takes to make some more iron sheet metal, which should then get us the redstone engineering blocks. And then as far as the piston is concerned, we should also have what it takes to make that as well. We totally do. The conveyor belt should be fairly straightforward. We just need to steal some leather out of here. Scroll wheel, by the way, to move those out individually. If you don't want to take out all of the items at once, you can scroll down to take out and scroll up to put in. Boom and boom. We can knock that off the list. And now it is just steel scaffolding, which requires some steel rods, which are a little expensive, but nothing we can't afford. We do need 3 of those, unfortunately. And boom. And then finally, we need that heavy engineering block, which does require 4 of these steel mechanical components. And so if we go ahead and place some copper and some steel plates into here, we can quickly make 4 of those, which then allows us to make 1 of these just as soon, again, as we make 4 steel sheet metal. Boom and boom. Nice. So now we should, I believe, be able, at the very least, to make the metal press. There is also a recipe here for the crusher, but I do think the crusher is going to be a little bit more expensive. So in here, if we want to buy the metal press placer, we can go ahead and spend 12 tech bucks on that. And then over here, if we want to actually use this, I think we might need to get this immersive engineering multi-block controller, because if we click on this here, it does say this allows you to use immersive places to place engineering multi-blocks quickly. So if we want to make this happen, we do first have to make this. I don't think this is like a permanent fixture that we have to leave down. I believe the idea here is that we take the immersive multi-block controller, we place it down, let's say right about here. We then right-click with the metal press placer. It places down the metal press. We can then pick this up, use our hammer to activate this multi-block by right-clicking on the piston, and now we have the metal press ready to go. All we have to do is connect it to power by putting down an LV connector and connecting it up to our pre-existing network. Now that we have the metal press, as it mentions here in the quest book, we can use this to make plates, wires, and gears just using ingots. We don't have to go through the rigmarole of melting them down and then solidifying them using things like the solidifier here. Instead, we could, for example, take our plate mold, place it in like so, you just right click, and then you'll see this is kind of moving from right to left here. All we would need to do is, for example, take some steel, drop it on like so, and as you drop it on, it's then going to kaplunk it into a steel plate. Nice. We can automate this a little bit by grabbing some chests, and then by either grabbing a pipe or a hopper. The pipe is probably the better choice here, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a chest on the end. That stops the items from just spewing out into the abyss, because now the plates will just go directly into that chest. And then on the other side here, if we throw down an item pipe and a regular chest, we can of course set this to extract. And now if we place our steel in here, that steel's going to make its way over and then get kaplunked automatically. Nice. So that just makes life a little bit easier. It means we can do more than 15 at a time. I can just throw, for example, 25 iron in there, and that's going to slowly but surely make all of that iron into iron plates. So now the final quest in this quest line is the quest for the Crusher Placer. I guess the quest is really to get a Crusher down. The reason for that is that if we look at the next quest line here, the Deep Slate quest line begins with Deep Slate, which as we saw before, is made by placing stone directly into the blast furnace. That is not too difficult, and now that we have the preheaters, we can do that fairly quickly, like so. Once we have the Deep Slate, we then need to crush the Deep Slate using the crusher from Immersive Engineering to get the crushed Deep Slate, which we can then use in the Rock Washer with either a silver focus, a nickel focus, or a lead focus to get silver, nickel, and lead, respectively. And so, to progress forward with the automation, we do need to get that multi-block crusher, and as per usual, if we type in crusher into JEI here, we can hover over the placer, and it tells us exactly what we need to build the crusher. We need 10 steel scaffolding, 1 redstone engineering block, 10 light engineering blocks, 8 steel sheet metal, and 9 hoppers. Thankfully, most of that doesn't seem too difficult. We do have a decent amount of steel already. Getting 9 hoppers is really just a case of crafting some chests and then using some of the iron that we already have. And then everything else here, steel scaffolding, we need 10. How much do we have? We got 4. If we wanted to make 10, it is actually quite nice for us here, and we can now make these steel rods more efficiently if we use the rod mold inside of the metal press. We've already made multiple rod molds so far, so we might as well take another one here and just throw that in like so. Just shift right click to take the current mold out, and then right click to put the new mold in. We only need 3 rods here, so now we can throw 3 ingots in. Previously, that would have cost us 9 ingots before we had the metal press. And then the light engineering blocks, I'm hoping, are cheaper than the heavy engineering blocks. They are indeed. It is just a bunch of iron sheet metal, iron mechanical components, and copper, which is really just a bunch of iron plates and copper. And a fair bit of crafting later, I believe that we now have everything that we need to place this down. Again, we can place it down manually, but we are getting quite a few tech books, and so I will go ahead and also purchase here the Crusher Placer. This is an even bigger multi-block structure than the metal press, and again, this is one that's going to use the immersive multi-block controller. So over here, if we go ahead and place this down, I'm going to put it down somewhat haphazardly, kind of right about here for now. Again, a lot of this stuff is probably going to get moved, but if we right-click like that, we can then pick up our multi-block placer, and we can once again right-click with the engineer's hammer onto the side, and that forms our crusher. Nice. From there, we are going to need another one of these LV wire connectors. I think we might have used up the full batch of LV wire connectors that we got initially. We definitely have, because you only get 4 at a time, and we already have 4 down. And so real quick, we are going to have to smelt some more terracotta. And I do think that it's at this point that we're probably going to start to run into power problems, because I think the crusher here does use quite a large amount of power to run. We will find out though, just as soon as we do something like this, and then connect this guy up. The power here goes there, which is a little bit awkward. I don't know if I can run the cable from here to here. Yeah, I can't because of the way that that is placed, Alright, so I moved the wooden post here just a few blocks over so that now we can indeed connect this up. It's still connected in the same way, it's just been moved to allow this to get some power. And so now we should be able to take the deep slate that is made in the blast furnace and crush it over in the crusher to get crushed deep slate, which is going to spew out the front here. Again, you can put a chest in front to automatically collect that crushed deep slate. And so now what I am going to do is I'm probably going to move a lot of this into a more organized line. What we need to do is we need to set up probably another stone miner, if not multiple, depending on how much stone we need. We need to automatically feed that stone into the blast furnace along with automatic charcoal to give us an unlimited supply of deep slate. We then need to take that deep slate and feed it into the crusher. The crusher here you can just pipe directly into, by the way, so you can do something like this. You'll see the pipe there does connect, so if we had, for example, a chest or a drawer full of deep slate, we could do something like this, set that to extract, and that deep slate would just get placed into the crusher and then would be crushed into crushed deep slate. We then need to take the crushed deep slate out and pump it between 3 rock washers, much like we have here, with the 3 different focuses. To get those focuses, we need to use our rock enricher blueprint, which I think we should already have over here. We do indeed. And just like before, we need to get 3 different colors of glass. This time it's blue, it's light blue, and it's yellow. All of those are going to be acquired through the stone cutter with dirt and bone meal like we've done every time before. And then after that, the process is going to be exactly the same. It's going to be rock washer into compactor into some kind of controller with lava and a solidifier to automate the production of lead, silver, and nickel. Alright, so quite a while later, and I have kind of revamped this whole area here. On the left, I've moved the initial blast furnace that we had to be over here with our metal press and our water wheel. All of this here that we can see is kind of temporarily placed just so that we can use it. Everything here is part of our automation line. So at the back, we have our stone miner, which is going to produce the stone. We're going to send that stone around to these 2 improved blast furnaces, which were not too difficult to make, just steel and more blast brick. I looked at the numbers here, and we get 1 stone every 5 seconds, or 100 ticks, and each blast furnace uses 1 stone every 10 seconds, and so having 2 blast furnaces should be able to process all of the stone from this basic miner into deep slate. So we're going to pipe that up and around into here. Over here we have our little coal generator set up in exactly the same way. The wood gets fed down, the coal gets fed out, and then the coal goes back in as a fuel. We're then going to go and take that charcoal and kind of run it up like this. We do want to make sure that there is disconnected, but we're going to run that up and over into our blast furnaces like this to make sure that they receive the charcoal that they need. Of course, it should go to the compressed furnace first, and then after that, we're going to run it across like this to the other blast furnace to make sure they both have fuel. We're also, of course, going to extract from here to distribute the stone to those as well. Up here, we have a cobblestone miner that runs all the way along to another one of these cobblestone melters. Over here, the setup is basically the exact same as what we had previously, but I've just set it up vertically so it doesn't take up as much horizontal base space. So we have our ambient water collectors feeding water into the rock washers. Those are then going to produce the ore pieces that are then going to be sent up to the compactors to get turned into the actual raw ores that we're then going to pump into this controller. That controller is then going to turn them into ingots using the solidifier, and then we'll extract from the solidifier into some storage drawers to store the final ingots. And of course, in the middle here, we have our crusher. We're going to take all the deep slate that comes from these 2 drawers, pump that round into the crusher, and then we'll take the crushed deep slate that comes out and distribute that amongst the rock washers. To do all of that, we're going to need way more of the logistical transporters. Now, I did go ahead and start smelting up 5 more stacks of brick, which we do now have and can use to make a lot of bricks, but the Twitch chat has pointed out that one thing we can do that I have not done is we can make this much easier if we use a compactor on our clay miner. Kind of in the same way that we've been doing with grout. The idea here is that if we put a compactor down, let's say, I guess right about here, the excess clay that we're producing goes into the compactor and just gets turned straight into bricks, and it is way faster and of course requires way less fuel than the smelting setup. So definitely good to know for the future of pipe making, and should make making these pipes in the future way easier. Speaking of which, I'll make a few sticks, and over here we should be able to get most of this up and running. The only slightly janky thing that we have going on here, let me disconnect that, is that I have had to connect one of these LV wire relays to the bottom of this pipe to get power kind of over to the crusher. This is working though. I haven't used any preheaters for this set of blast furnaces because the calculation that we've made is based on non-preheated furnaces, so these should just work. And thankfully, the production of deep slate doesn't produce any byproducts, so there's no need for a storage drawer on the back. So let's go ahead and kind of run this along up to here. I am going to do something like this, I think. It does mean we're going to have to do quite a bit of disconnecting, but I think it's going to look better if we have that kind of running just directly under that pipe. We can then set this to extract. And I also think it might look a little bit better if we extract from the front here, like this. It's a small tweak, but I think it does look better like that. That's going to then provide the stone to both of these, which is good. Again, it shouldn't be able to go backwards. Stone can't go into here, so it shouldn't go this way. I'm pretty sure the stone should just go into both of these blast furnaces. The way we've got this set up, it is going to send stone to one first, but of course, as with all of our setups, eventually this will fill up, and then this will start to fill up, and there really shouldn't be any excess with the way we've set this up, so long as we're crushing things fast enough, which I'm hoping we should be. And so all we are going to do then is extract from the storage drawers and send all of the products around to the crusher. So if we do something like this and like this, we might run into a problem if it tries to send cobblestone down to here, but of course we are going to disconnect that, like so, and like so, and we're just going to run this across like this, making sure we disconnect everything along the way like that, and then we're just going to extract the deep slate from here, and from here that should pipe it round into the crusher, and then the crusher is obviously going to turn it into crushed deep slate. It's at this point that we do want to try to evenly distribute the crushed deep slate between the 3 rock washers. One thing we can make to help with that is the logistical sorter. This is made with an upgrade base, along with 2 basic logistical transporters and 2 item routers. The item routers, thankfully, super easy to make, just basic logistical transporters and treated wooden planks. And this guy goes on the chest that we want to extract from, so in this case here, and then we can run the pipes from there, not directly into the crusher. Instead, we can run them around into these 3 rock washers like this. And the idea here is that we can use this to kind of make the pipes a bit smarter. Specifically, I want to turn round robin on like that. And so now in here, we could filter specifically for crushed deep slate, but because we know that's all that's going to be in here, we can actually just set the eject unfiltered here to on, and that's going to push that up and should distribute it evenly between the 3 rock washers. Look at that, nice. So because we have that round robin enabled, it's going to evenly distribute the crushed deep slate, which it wouldn't otherwise do. I am going to go ahead and swap this out for a storage drawer, like so we can get some extra deep slate and see how much we have at a glance. Over here, this should now begin to wash the deep slate just as soon as we get the focuses. Over here, I have been working on those focuses. We're just waiting on the lead focus. Over here, let's do this. Let's do this. We can then extract here, here, and here to send everything around to the compactor. And then, of course, finally, all we would need to do is extract here, here, and here, like that, to send everything around to the solidifier. And at that point, this automation is kind of almost good to go and should kind of just work. We are going to get 3 more storage drawers to be able to collect what comes out here. And I guess actually we probably want to do the same thing we did with our previous setup and put down 3 solidifiers and kind of lock each one to a specific ingot resource, just to make sure that we don't have any cross-contamination and to make sure that we're smelting everything as fast as possible. Over here, this lead focus is now done. Let me put that into its own rock washer. The bad news here is that it looks like, unfortunately, unlike the iron, the aluminum, and the tin, we cannot smelt the silver, the nickel, and the lead in the controller. This just doesn't work. It looks like we have to first crush it again in a crusher to make the dust version, and then from there we can use either a regular furnace or another melter to melt and then cast the ingots. The good news is that we are going to get more ingots because of that, because instead of just getting 1 ingot from 1 raw lead, we have a 33.33% chance of getting an extra ingot for each one of these. The bad news is that I have to make another crusher, place that down here, provide that with power, and then pipe into the solidifying setup to get the ingots. One interesting idea that's being posed in the Twitch chat here is using the same crusher that we already have, and then using the fact that we have this logistical sorter here to filter the kind of final outputs of where things are going to go. So the idea here would be that we would kind of extract from the back of all of these, like this, and then potentially, I'm thinking where I want to run this pipe. I'm going to run this pipe up by one. Of course, we're going to make sure it doesn't connect up at the top there, which is easier if you have your wrench in the right mode. Let me do this and that. And of course, we'll do the same with every one of these because I don't want any of those going the wrong way. And then we're going to pipe that background into here. It does mean we are going to have to re-swap this out because we don't want a drawer here. We want a chest of some persuasion so we can actually store everything. I guess what we could put here, actually, if we wanted to, is we could put down our first 2x2 drawer. That is this one right here that can hold 4 different items. For that, we do need 4 of these drawer core 4s, which is 4 regular chests, which we do not have, but we can definitely make. And then I would just need to grab the drawer blueprint, and I think if I put that in here with the 4 chests, that should get us 4 of those 4 drawer cores and should allow us to make a 2x2 drawer. Ideally, then I think we'd also want to get a drawer key. The drawer key requires a regular drawer core, which we might already have. We totally do. We're just missing 1 Technium Ingot. Over here, we should have even more Technium Ingots. We do. We've got 33. Those have been backing up nicely while we've been working on other stuff. The benefit of the drawer key here is that you can lock a drawer to a specific resource. So usually, when you take all of a given resource out, the drawer is just empty and anything can go in there, especially if you're automating. Whereas if you lock the drawer with the key by right-clicking, you can then take all of that item out and you'll see that at the top, there's no iron in, but it still locks to iron, so nothing else is going to make its way into there, which is good for us. So just as soon as we get our 4 drawer cores, we can then use that to make a 2x2 oak drawer. Thankfully, you do get 4 of these at a time. And now back over here, if I put this down like so, we're going to go ahead and kind of allow that to produce all of the different resources. So I am going to go ahead and set all of these to extract like this. And I'm going to temporarily turn this off. I'm going to say, don't eject unfiltered contents. Just hold everything for now. And so we should start to see the lead, the nickel, and the silver dust entering this crusher here, assuming that our crusher is fast enough to keep up. It looks like we might need to get some more power going because the crusher is chugging through the power here, but hopefully we should see all 4 of these slots fill up, at which point we can then go ahead and lock this drawer. From there, what we probably want to do is in here we can add filters, and if I'm not mistaken, what we might be able to do here is go new filter, item stack, put in the crushed deep slate, and then change the color on this to say black and click save. Then I think what we want to do is if we use our configurator, we can shift right click onto these pipes to set them to black. And if I'm not mistaken, that should mean that the crushed deep slate can only go into those slots. From there, we then also want to set up another whitelist that's going to send all of the other stuff around into the controller. Let me take all those out. And over here, we do want to actually get rid of that for now because I do want the deep slate to stay in here so I can actually lock the drawer. So let me wait a second until we get the crushed silver so we can lock this drawer. Okay, so once we have all 4 resources in here, I'm going to lock this. I have tweaked this a bit. So what I've done is we now have a pipe going up through the middle and across over to the controller over here. And then here, we do have 2 pipes going into the crusher. They're not necessary. I just wanted this to be symmetrical. So we do have 2 pipes going from the 3 compactors over into here. And now I think what we should be able to do is we should be able to, like we did a second ago, set this to new filter, item stack, put the crushed deep slate in the top and set this to black. Click save. That should now extract that and only put it into these 3 that have black pipes next to them. Over here, I'm going to go ahead and set this to a different color. So again, shift right click, let's set that to blue for now. And then over here, if we take 1 of each of these 3, in here, if I go new filter, item stack, and say nickel dust, and I change that to blue. By the way, just left click on the blocks here to change the color. Click save. That should now extract the nickel dust and send it to where the blue is. Nice. We can do the exact same thing here for lead. Boom. And blue. Save. And the same thing as well for silver. And blue. Save. So now it's going to extract all of the dusts and send them around into here, which is then going to melt into ingots, and it's going to send all of the deep slate to where it needs to go, and we've effectively managed to use the one crusher to do everything. We do need way more power to keep this running at a decent speed, but this is working, and so now I'm just going to make 2 more solidifiers. I'll lock this one to nickel. I'm going to make 2 more solidifiers and 3 more storage drawers so that we can kind of finalize this setup. Alright, so 2 more solidifiers later and 3 more storage drawers later, I believe that we have now fully automated the production of silver, nickel, and lead, albeit somewhat slowly due to the speed of this crusher, but this is totally working, which is good. So that is like most of this quest line taken care of. Let me grab one of each of these so we can kind of complete those quests, and let me claim my mountain of tech books as a reward. Fantastic. I guess we can also probably go and just kind of drop these in here. The crusher can hold, I think, almost an unlimited number of items, so you really don't need to worry too much about this overflowing. So now that that is taken care of, looking ahead at the actual advanced Technium ingot, we do of course need to make the advanced Technium machine. To do this, we need a basic Technium machine frame, which we've made, 2 steel gears, which we've not made, but we can make fairly easily, especially with the metal press here. Speaking of steel, I'm going to continually keep putting iron and charcoal into this guy over here so that we are kind of passively making steel. Of course, that does need to be automated at some point, but for now, we can keep working with that. The atomic reconstructor here is how we make the crystals required right here. These Inori crystals are made using the atomic reconstructor with nickel. So back over at our crafting grid, if we want to make the atomic reconstructor, we need another basic Technium machine frame. As we saw just a moment ago, we have a ton of basic Technium now, and so we can go ahead and craft at least 2 more of those, because we've seen 2 of them so far, 1 required as well for the advanced Technium machine controller. We also need 4 silver and some redstone. I should run even more inventory cable over to another inventory connector over here so that we actually have access to all of these. I am also going to lock all 3 of these, but for now I'm just going to take all of the ingots that we have and put them in here just so I can use them for crafting. So this is missing 1 redstone. Redstone we should have somewhere. Yes, we've got 64 in here. Let me take that and quickly smelt it over in here into some redstone dust. That will eventually kind of back up our furnace, but we can always take it out, of course, to use it. Once we have at least 1 back over here, we can do something like this. With this, what we should be able to do, if we hook this up to power, which is kind of a big if, because we don't actually have that much power at all, but let me do something like this and like this. That should start receiving power very slowly. By default here, the redstone mode is set to deactivation, so by default, this is going to kind of zap automatically, which is not at all what we want. To change that, we just need to get a redstone torch. So let me take all the redstone that we're acquiring out of here. Let me remember that I can use /home to get back and forth much faster. So if I take this redstone torch, and also if I take some kind of button, I'll go with a stun button for now. The button is going to allow us to trigger the laser by changing this from deactivation to pulse. So now if we put the button on top, it's going to zap only when we press the button and tell it to zap. The way this works, for example, if we wanted to make 6 of these Inori crystals, we just need to place down 6 nickel, which we might have right here. We do. We'll take 9, we'll place that down in front of the laser, we'll press the button, and that zaps the nickel into Inori crystals. Nice. So now, back over here, if we wanted to make the advanced Technium machine, all we would need to do is get enough steel to make 2 steel gears, which we already have, and we would just need 1 more gear mold. That didn't need to use an aluminum gear for that. I should have used a wooden gear, but if we take that gear and we place it in over here in place of the plate mold, we can then drop down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 steel, like so, and 4 at a time, those are going to be taken and converted into steel gears, which we can then go ahead and craft into the advanced Technium machine. Now, of course, much like the previous tier, this does require another multi-block, and just like the previous tier again, if we check the advanced Technium placer, it's going to tell us what we need. So to make this happen, we need 16 steel scaffolding, 9 light engineering blocks, 57 wooden scaffolding, 1 heavy engineering block, 12 copper coil blocks, and 16 structural glass, which I think is the only thing that we have yet to make. This is not too bad. It's a little steel heavy, but it's really just a case of getting 16 steel and crafting it with 4 glass to get 16 structural glass. So most of that should be fine. And so let me see if I can't find a place to put this and if we can get this down. Alright, so another chunk of crafting later, we do now have all of the items, all the steel scaffolding, light engineering blocks, wooden scaffolding, heavy engineering blocks, copper coil blocks, and structural glass. We already had some of these, like we made the heavy engineering blocks earlier, and a lot of these were fairly easy to make. It's kind of stuff we've already made, but we're just making more of it. And so now I'm going to go ahead and buy the advanced technium placer, and eventually, I think kind of like this, I want the multi-block structure to be in the middle of our automation. On this side right now, the middle's kind of going to end up being like here, and I don't really want to move all this just yet, so what I'm going to do temporarily is I'm going to place it down kind of somewhere around here, and we'll probably end up moving it in the not-so-distant future. So this is the structure, and now we need to go ahead and get all of this stuff here, including the molten obsidian, most of which I think we can get, and so I think we should be able to make our first advanced technium. The molten obsidian, though, is going to pose an issue, because in order to get it, I think we first have to get an obsidian blueprint, and that requires 32 basic research and 4 bronze blocks. So the 4 bronze blocks we do have, we can take those, and of course the basic research we can slowly acquire. So let me go and throw this into here to start making more basic research, and as soon as that's done, we can go ahead and unlock this ability here. We are going to have to reset up the multi-block alloy kiln to allow us to turn lava and water into molten obsidian. While we wait for that, let's see if we have everything else to make this happen. So redstone is over here clogging up our system. Let's take all of that out. If we're going to make just one of these, we need 16 redstone, which we have. Let's throw that into here. Cool. After that, I can unbookmark that. We do need 4 bronze blocks as well, I think, to make 1 advanced technium. That is true. I'll put those in. We can get some more if we need to. Lead here can be zapped over here to make lapis, and then lapis can be zapped to make palace crystals. So we need, I think it's 16 of those. It is. So if I do something like this, we can zap those once to make lapis, which I'll pick up because it might be a quest. It totally is. And then we'll throw them down and zap it again to make palace crystals, and now that is done. Perfect. Silver plates should be pretty straightforward. The same is true for nickel rods and aluminum gears. So we need 8 silver plates, which I'll take out of here. We do currently have the plate mold in this solidifier, so if I just throw the 8 silver in there, that should smelt and solidify into 8 silver plates. We can then do the exact same with the nickel rods. We just need 4 of those, and of course the rod mold. We might have some nickel ingots in our system. I'll have to check. And then aluminum we do have a load of, so that's going to be fine. Let me take some aluminum, and I'll throw that onto the metal press over here, although power is proving to be a little bit dicey, which is why I kind of pivoted back to using the solidifier, because this was not doing a great job, especially when it runs out of power. It goes really, really slow. But let's leave that on there. That's going to slowly produce some gears for us. Let me go check if we have enough nickel to make the nickel rods. We do. We got 27. So these silver plates should be done. They totally are. If I swap that out for a rod mold, I can then throw in some nickel like that. That's going to make us 8 nickel rods, which should also be enough to make our first ingot. So we'll put you in here. We can unbookmark that. We can unbookmark this. It, of course, needs basic technium, which we also do have. In fact, we might have more. We totally do. Let's take that. Let's take all of these. Fantastic. And so now we're not too far away, actually, from making this happen. We need 2 more things. We need snow blocks, and we need crushed deep slate. Crushed deep slate, we don't have, but we can get if we kind of temporarily turn this off and stop it. Actually, I think I can put that back now that I mentioned it, because I'm assuming that we have some in here. We totally do. Let me take these out. Let me quickly re-add that back to this list. New filter, item stack, and crushed deep slate. Save. Let's throw you into here. So now, the aluminum gears hopefully are done. They totally are. And so now, it is just snow blocks and molten obsidian. Let me check on the research over here. Is this almost good to go? It's getting there. It's not quite good to go just yet, though. We do still need even more, of course, for this obsidian blueprint. We need 32. We also probably are going to have to use this the bronze that we already had, so we're going to need to make more. That's fine. Snow blocks here can be made by crafting snowballs, which can be made in a freezer with clay. For that, we need some more technium nuggets to make another basic technium machine frame, and then from there we need 2 of these void crystal blocks, which are made by zapping coal. So we need 18 coal. Thankfully, we do have 18 coal. Let's take all of that and zap that into 18 crystals. Boom and boom. Fantastic. We can then craft those into the 2 required blocks, like that, and that should get us our freezer. The freezer here does require power, so we are going to have to put it over on the side of the base that has power, and we are also crucially going to need at least 1 bit of wire here to actually connect that up. So let's put you down for now right about here. Again, very temporary location for that, but boom and boom, that's going to give that power. And apparently freezing clear is how you get snowballs. So we'll put you in like that. That's going to freeze those into snowballs. We can then craft those snowballs into snow blocks, and that's going to be that taken care of. So now it's really just maybe more bronze and the obsidian. How much did I need for the obsidian? I needed 32. That's very close. Let me get the bronze back out of here because I'm going to need that. And while I wait for that to come in, let me get the multi-block alloy kiln back up and running as well, so we can make even more bronze and then eventually use it to make the molten obsidian. Alright, so once we have the obsidian blueprint, I have replaced down, somewhat haphazardly, the alloy kiln right here. I did cave, and I bought the alloy kiln placer to place this down nice and fast. In here, we are making bronze ingots. We just about, there we go, have enough to make 4 bronze blocks. And so all we should have to do is place in the obsidian blueprint, like this, into the fuel slot, and then if we put in 1 bucket of lava, like so, and 1 bucket of water, like so, that should go ahead and produce 1 bucket of molten obsidian. Over here, we can craft up our 4 blocks of bronze. And then if we do a quick slash back, we can throw those into here. And just as soon as we get our bucket of molten obsidian, we should be pretty much good to go. Let me put you in there. Let me grab our snowballs. Let's craft those into snow blocks. Let's place those into the advanced Technium machine frame. And if that's enough, which it's not, we need 16 of these, so we do have to wait a little bit longer because unfortunately snowballs only stack in sets of 16, which is why that's not completed. But as soon as we get our 16 snowballs here, that is going to get us our first advanced Technium. And next time, we're going to come back and, I guess, look at kind of fully automating this in a similar way to what we did with the basic Technium. A lot of this shouldn't be too difficult. We kind of already have the crushed deep slate. We already have the basic Technium. The redstone dust is just going to be 2 more blast furnaces with some smelting to automate it. The bronze block is going to be a case of automating the alloy kiln here, and the same is true with the molten obsidian. We're going to need another one of these alloy kilns to automate that, but with the cobblestone melter and the water collector, we should be able to make that fairly easily. And then for things like the silver, the nickel, and the aluminum, it's just a case of either setting up multiple more metal presses to make those, or multiple more of these controllers with solidifiers with the different casts to get the gears, the rods, and the plates. The trickier bit might be the palace crystals. We do need to zap those twice. I'm not yet quite sure how I want to automate that. Maybe some kind of dropper with a pressure plate or something, and then maybe like an item collector, but I'm not entirely certain on how we're going to make that happen. But the good news is that for now, we can do this, we can do this, and we can do this. And that is going to make us our first advanced Technium ingot. And technically, it will unlock the ability for us to start looking at the advanced research here and seeing if there's any of this that we want to unlock. Again, whether or not we can actually do anything with 1 advanced Technium ingot is yet to be seen, because I'm assuming most of these require even more. There are some really cool upgrades here that I want to get. I want to get the speed curio. This just allows us to move faster. I also really want to get the hunger curio, because I believe that this is going to prevent hunger and mean that we don't have to eat going forward, which I think is going to be huge. But that is going to have to be something we do in the next episode, because I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of Techopolis 3 there.